I first watched Steins Gate way back in 2012, I was ready to quit anime. My early history with the medium goes a little like this: Brotherhood, Death Note, Anohana, Kimi ni Todoroki, Clannad, and then almost every major romance series in the last decade to try to fill the void. Watching the same genre over and over is a bad idea in any medium, but as I had yet to explore all anime had to offer, I was bored. So, being the fledgling casual I was, I went on Mal's top anime page and decided to watch the first new series I came across, which, as you can probably guess, was Steins Gate, sitting pretty at number 2. Considering I'm here talking to you on this anime YouTube channel right now, I bet you can picture how my first experience with Steins Gate went. Yes, it immediately became one of my favorites and brought me back into anime, this time with an interest in more than one genre. However, unlike all the other shows I love so much, I've never gone back to Steins Gate until now. Why? I don't know, but it's offered me the rare opportunity to take a new vantage point into a series I've already seen. 4 years is a long time after all, and as my experience with anime has grown, my tastes have certainly changed. Some shows I used to call my favorites aren't so anymore. Maybe Steins Gate would be no different. I expected not to enjoy it as much during this rewatch, but guess what? I still love Steins Gate. My overall feelings on the show are actually quite simple. It's absolutely thrilling, I couldn't get enough of it, and so on. But what specifically makes the series appealing to me? Well, it begins and ends with the story. Steins Gate follows self-proclaimed mad scientist Hoin Kyoma, aka Okabe Rintaro. Together with his fellow lab members Mairi and Daru, the three go through the motions of their daily lives until they accidentally stumble upon a real breakthrough when they discover their latest invention, the phone microwave, which turns bananas into piles of green gel, is actually capable of sending emails into the past, altering the course of history. Between this revelation and Okabe's fateful meeting with fellow scientist Makise Kurisu, the three have set in place a chain of events that could bring about world destruction if Okabe doesn't make things right. It's one of the most intricate, well-thought-out narratives I've seen, and certainly stands out in the oversaturated time travel genre, anime or otherwise. Each section of the plot, bar one, has something to love about it, and the way the pieces come together in the show's final third is imaginatively genius. It takes several hallmarks of the classic time travel story, but puts its own unique spin on the idea as well. I'm sure you're familiar and bored with the butterfly effect trope, however Steins Gate uses it right, not only as a tool for crafting a highly entertaining plotline, but also for an impressive level of emotional power. This isn't the typical story of idiot scientist just so happens to discover time travel, now watch him go on these adventures. The series sets itself up that way, before revealing a complex world with its own set of rules and ideas. Perhaps the most important aspect every time travel story has to establish is its mechanics. Without any set limits, the world loses any remaining believability it had and can quickly devolve into an ass-pull-driven mess. It may sound ironic, but it's critical for a time travel story to always make sense within the constructs of its own established universe. You know, all that wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. For the most part, Steins Gate has no such problem, establishing its rules to a T. Literally. They actually specify how many characters the emails to the past can contain. Even in time travel, Twitter still manages to fuck us over. It introduces highly intriguing concepts and executes them to near perfection. The whole idea of world lines and divergence fascinates me and helps Steins Gate separate itself in such an overdone genre. In particular, the idea of alpha world lines converging into one unchangeable event, that you can change any number of past events from what you ate for breakfast last week to your friend's gender, but there are certain key events you can't change, where all the nearby world lines converge. Okabe's struggle to find a way around this idea drives the series' plot and offers up several of its more emotional moments. Right when he thinks he has absolute power, he finds he really has no power at all. As grandiose as my summary of the premise makes the series sound, you couldn't tell from the show's first few episodes. Steins Gate has a massive, wild story to tell, but it takes its time in getting there, spending the entire first half putting the pieces in place and acquainting you with its characters. The pacing and relative lack of excitement in the series' first half is the most common complaint I see, yet to me, the slow start is part of what makes the payoff so great once the story heats up. The first half introduces us to the characters and their eccentric personalities, growing that sense of attachment so the emotional impact of the ultimate tragedy carries much more weight. Perhaps more importantly, however, these episodes build intrigue into the world and its mechanics. The slow-burning style is bound to bore some, but I personally found Okabe's experiments with the phone microwave and monologues about the evil Saturn organization enthralling. You knew his actions would have some consequences, but had no idea what those would be, making the tension that much greater as he continued to press his luck. Some say this borderline slice-of-life part of the story stretched on too long. However, I'd argue it was necessary to build both your attachment to the characters and intrigue in the world. Not to mention all the smaller details you likely missed on the first watch-through that ultimately have massive consequences in the show's second half. Speaking of which, Steins Gate damn sure knows how to pack a punch. The series really takes off in episode 12 and almost never looks back. All that rising tension comes to an emotionally devastating head, and you finally start to see the intricacy behind the world and plot. The show's final third manages to tie all the loose ends together, pun intended, and the series' last few episodes are an emotional roller coaster to say the least. Now, as most of you know, the series is an adaptation of the ultra-popular visual novel. Most of the time, you couldn't tell. Hell, you might even think it was an original series. Others, the visual novel mechanics behind the story become very clear. As such, the story fell a bit flat during Okabe's attempts to undo everything he did in the show's first half. The romance-driven subplots didn't carry over particularly well, and the entire stretch of episodes felt extremely tedious. Not only is it obvious that he's going to succeed, this was just setting up the stretch run after all, you also know exactly how it's going to happen. After the emotional thrill ride of the previous few episodes starting with 12, this section of the story is far more boring. The quasi-slice-of-life style worked in the first half as it built the world and characters, but here it's a major letdown compared to the excitement of the episodes before and after. Unlike Okabe, whose off-the-wall personality never turns into flanderization, as his humanity only becomes more and more of a focus as the series progresses, the supporting characters are largely driven by one odd personality trait and never venture too far outside those confines. Ferris is the obvious example, but even Rukako and Mayuri are fairly stagnant throughout the series. In Mayuri's case, it's necessary to emphasize her innocence and the shining light Okabe sees her through, but for the others, I got the sense the visual novel fleshed their stories out much more, and they simply had to cut out something to fit it all into 24 episodes. That being said, the main duo carries the series, with Okabe alone making up for any of the other characters' deficiencies and then some. The witty, wry back and forth between him and Kurisu never got old, and their relationship helped lend the series its emotional backbone. An important yet hard to manage part of any romance is the chemistry between the characters, but Steins Gate gets it just right. Okabe's relationship with Mayuri works in a different way, but also succeeds in creating that emotional impact. Technically, Steins Gate isn't particularly noteworthy. The animation's good enough, but for a 2011 series, it doesn't compare to the best of that year or any since. The sound, on the other hand, is a different story. The OST has a few standout tracks, notably Gate of Steiner and Believe in Me, but it always fits the mood and helps create the emotion of its more powerful moments. The real star, however, is the opening. Yes, Hacking to the Gate is still my favorite opening of all time, partly because I love the song, but also thanks to the incredible visuals rife with symbolism and subtle foreshadowing I love to see in a great OP. So what does that all add up to? Aside from an obvious recommendation to go watch it, Steins Gate really manages something special with its story. It combines all the pieces of a great time travel tale with gripping, impactful drama, a balance many of the entries in this genre fail to manage. It's no coincidence most of my favorite time travel stories are comedies, or some cases where the time travel is really ancillary to the overall point. With intriguing mechanics and likable characters, it builds its world slowly but methodically, before crashing it all down in exhilarating, largely unpredictable fashion. Steins Gate ultimately comes down to a man having to choose between the two people he loves most. No matter how hard he tries to find a way around it, in the end, he has to make an impossible decision. The writing is superb here, and it makes for one incredibly moving, tragic climax. A good portion of that emotion is cheapened when he later does find that way out, a move I'm sure a lot of you really won't like. But does he not deserve a happy ending? I still liked the ending the second time through, but the cheapening of the tragic climax was somewhat bothersome. Still, Steins Gate is a remarkable piece of storytelling. The character interactions are both fun and emotional, especially between the main duo. The humor is sharp, the world is engrossing, and the plot is absolutely thrilling. A lot has changed over the last 4 years, anime-related and not, but I've yet to find a world line where I don't love Steins Gate. Really though, it makes me wonder, if I could send one email to my past self, what would I say? So with that, I award Steins Gate an approval rating of best of the best, as well as an overall score of... Oh, well, I guess we're going with that then. Okay, let's call it 4.56903 Dr. Peppers out of 5. Steins Gate stands out to me as one of the best time travel stories ever told, with its intricately crafted, emotionally powerful narrative. After several issues I claim to have had with the series, you may be wondering why I still gave it a best of the best rating. It's not always about how many flaws a show has, it's about whether the show can overcome them. And in my book, Steins Gate surely did that. When I first watched it, I'd grown disenchanted with anime in general, but Steins Gate reinvigorated my interest. Whether that's good or bad is up to you.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
But I'll always personally appreciate Steins Gate for getting me back into anime. Hell, at one point it was my second favorite series of all time, and while I may not love it quite as much as I once did, it's still towards the top. Where? Well, you'll just have to wait for that. Other recommendations in the time travel family are limited since there really aren't that many good ones in anime, but let's go with two great films. First, check out Mamoru Hosoda's The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, for a story about living in the present and the consequences of changing the past. Expect this to focus a little less on the mechanics and theory behind the time travel and a bit more on its overall message. Second, take a look at The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, for another series with an emotional story of parallel universes, terrific character interactions, and the classic witty humor which fans of Haruhi love so much. It's one of my favorite anime films ever, and easily the highlight of the franchise. As a sequel to the series, you only really need to watch Season 1 and the first episode of Season 2 to follow along, however, I'd recommend watching it all for the full effect. And I do mean all. And that'll do it for me. If you're feeling particularly generous and want to help me survive until next week, please consider checking out my Patreon page. Any help goes a long way. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to follow me on Twitter at UTS Reviews. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.